Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube art tutorial channel. I'm a professional artist working from my studio in Essex in the UK and painting plein air in the countryside. Today I'm demonstrating at the West Mersey Art Group. Well, good morning everyone. I've got another course on this morning. Well, it's a workshop really for the day, and it's on Mersey Island again. So what are we, just after 9 o'clock, and I'm just heading across what we call the Strood, and luckily the tide is out at the moment, otherwise you can soon be about a half an hour's wait. But yeah, here we go. We're going across the water area. The tide is coming in, but it may not be a high tide. Okay, good. Well, I'm looking forward to the day, really. Well, I'm at East Mersey Village Hall this morning, and I'm running a group of for a group of artists here on Mersey Island. So really looking forward to it, all set up. So I'm going to pop inside and meet the group. Well, it's break time here at East Mersey Workshop, and they've all done very well actually. We've got some lovely tonal contrasts, which was the first half we was looking at, the tonal contrast of the painting, of the coloured painting that I was doing in the second half. So we're going to have some lunch, and then we're going to crack on with our coloured version. Right you are. Well, the second half we're going to look at the colour version. So you've done all the hard work, now the easy part. Right. Well, we've got our tonal version up there, right? So I think that most of you should have your drawing down onto your watercolour paper, which is fine. Now, we've got to treat this in a similar manner with tones. The only thing we've got to do is add colour. Well, the first thing we painted with the tone value was as far down as that line there. Right the way across. I haven't actually continued that there, but I will paint right the way through. We've got a very light sky. We've got a little bit of distant hills that we may, hopefully, I may get to stick a bit higher than that there. And then we've got a hedging. We've got some trees that overhang and some trees behind there. They're all going to be treated in a wet into wet fashion. So, the large brush again, vital, thoroughly soaked, and because this is at this angle, I'm actually going to damp this before I lay on colour, just to guarantee it stays. It's warmed up in here nicely, and it will dry very quickly, so it's not a bad idea to damp. And when you work at an angle, this is not the ideal angle, as you probably would realise, but it's the angle that we need so that you can see. Although you might work at a little bit of a lesser angle, it always dries from the top first, because the water naturally runs down. So, damp the top a couple of times and allow that paint or that water to run down. So that's what I've done there, and I'm coming down as far as that line there. And that isn't quite as damp, but that's hopefully so it doesn't get a bead of colour on there. And I'm going to damp it again when I put colour on. Now, it's almost white, but we did give it a bit of tint, and I feel that we need a bit of warmth for all the greens that we've got there. Greens, you need a bit of warmth, albeit you'll only feel it. And I'm just looking at the colours. Oh, alizarin crimson. Good job I included that, because that's the colour I'm going to use. Alizarin crimson. There you go, look at that. Very weak, and it's more or less painting it. It's almost damping the paper. just use a bit of freedom. Don't be too fussed at where it goes. And why not just put a touch of blue? Tell you what, I'm going to use the Windsor blue or Prussian blue. Okay? And sunlight coming from there, just a touch of that blue there. Just a little, just to give it a little idea of where. There we are, get a nice soft distant sky. Right, next will be the distant land. I'm going to use ultramarine blue with raw sienna for this. Right, more blue than raw sienna. You could use yellow ochre if you wish, but this has got to be quite blue because it's distant land. Okay, and the distant land comes there like that. And I'm going to sweep that rather across and just pick up some of that colour while I'm going. Ultramarine, ultramarine blue.
Sorry, Colin, can you repeat the bit after the blue of the sky? With
Yes, we've got the alizarin for the sky.
Yeah.
We've got the Prussian or Windsor blue for the blue area.
Yeah.
So it's a different blue.
Yeah.
Then I'm using ultramarine blue and raw sienna, just a touch of raw sienna to start with, right?
Yeah.
For the distant land, wood or whatever. But albeit it's nice and soft, right? Now, just beginning to dry off. Now, I'm going to use the ultramarine with, to start with, the cadmium yellow. Have I got cadmium yellow? Yes, I have. Or Windsor yellow, whichever yellow you've got. And this is a bluer green because I'm going to paint in the distant trees there. There we go. See how bluey green that is? And the same technique. There we are. So that is a blue green. So it's ultramarine with a touch of the yellow in there. Okay. Touch of the cadmium yellow. Yep, that's the one. And we're dropping in very, very weak. And notice how I'm going more ultramarine because I want that to sit back in a blurred fashion. Right? Notice I'm leaving that edge there for the other tree to come in. And this finishes there. There we go. Yeah, so that's ultramarine and cad yellow, or if you wish, you can use Windsor yellow, but some of you probably have only got cadmium. Then, while that's drying off, first thing I need to do is create the shape of that overhanging. So we're painting the negative against the positive shape of that tree that stands in that area there. So that will be tinted later. Right, so we've got the shape of our slightly lighter tree. And just before it dries, more cadmium yellow going in, and I'm going to paint in, just beginning to dry off, so I'm painting in the top there. So this is the more or less the blurred background that I'm looking for, with a few overhanging branches on the outer edge, just as I did there. They're not blending quite as well because it's drying a lot quicker, which is not a problem. Main thing is that we pick up some lighter tone there, and I'm going to paint this right down, and as I go to the outside edges, notice how I'm painting in some overhanging branches. Okay, just add a bit more water, a bit more yellow now. I just want that bit of glint of sun. You know, we've got some nice bright yellows there. And I'm just dropping those in. So do you remember what we did here? Exactly the same thing with the tone version, but this time in colour. There we are. We've got a lovely soft area. So this one is more blue. So that stands back. That's away into the distance. This is a bit more yellow. So that one essentially is coming behind this tree here. So really, no, let's finish. Let's do the same process as we did with that one. Okay, so that's that. That's good. Now, I've now got the shape of that tree. And this is going to be, look how quite vibrant. I'm using a bit more yellow into that. So it's quite a nice sort of spring summer green. Providing it's lighter than the colour that you had on there originally, that background, it will naturally appear to come forward. Notice how I'm creating these sort of outside edges that are more clearly defined than there. See how these are a bit more clearly defined. And I'm just painting into that, just hoping that it doesn't run too much. No, that's good. And this is going to come right down into the bank area, which is pretty much here. There we go.
So
And
how
then,
did you get the lighter shade? Did you just
yes, a bit
add
more
in
water and a bit more yellow. That's purely all that is. Now I'm using a stronger mix of the same two colours. Prussian or Windsor blue with cadmium yellow now to give me that more vibrant green that will just give me a different tone on that right hand side. Let's just add a bit more of the Prussian, a bit more of the yellow, because that'll give us a nice, darker green, just for that right hand side. And what I'm going to do here is just show a jagged edge, and I'm going to pull some darker touches on the underside. Notice how I'm doing, see where I'm creating the feeling of overhanging branches, light on the top, darker underneath. If you can achieve that, you will be on your way to a perfect form of tree. There you go. There you go. What about that? It's got to be somewhere near it. It's got to. What I like is the glow on them trees. Right, that's the key to it. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do to enhance that. I'm just going to go a little darker on the undersides so that we can really see where nice. Don't want too much of this, you know. Is that too much of a good thing, really? As the old problem. A bit more blue now, just into this area, and just touch back. Now, I don't want just a dome of blue. I want to drop back in places, and if it just begins to dry, that's when you get that lovely texture that is soft, but it looks like a tree that stands in front, or a bush area that stands in front of the distant trees beyond. And then finally, what I'm going to do, it's almost dry along there, and but I'm just going to put in that distant area, and I'm going to use raw sienna with a touch of Windsor blue, and this will give me a different type of green, something other than the cadmium or Windsor yellow would give you.
So it's Prussian instead of Windsor blue?
Yes, basically, yep. Prussian or Windsor, yeah, yeah. And plenty of blue in there, but because we're using raw sienna, we'll end up with a slightly different tone. Now, that shows light there, but I think you can't see where the hedge, the field finishes and the hedging begins. So this is probably the only place on this painting that I'm going to change the tone value. So I'm going to go a little darker. Just a little too dark, let's not be too... Got to be blue. Ah, there we go, look at that. And that is a row of hedges, or hedge area that just stands along that bottom edge. And I'm just going to make it a little bit uneven, and it's going to finish there because the trees in the front take that position. And that is all I'm going to do. So we've got the light sky, there's the wet into wet backgrounds, and then just a little bit of a harder edge there, and obviously there. And that is the first stage before we look at the field. So there you go, you know. Okay, well that particular part of the, it's more or less the first stage, getting those wet into wet backgrounds. Right. Now, the next stage, if I remember rightly, I painted the field and down into the water area, and I also painted a little bit of this in. Right? So that's what I'm going to do, a little bit of that foreground. A lot of foreground there, so that should be interesting. Right, now, the colours that I'm going to use for this are, I'm going to use Windsor blue or Prussian blue, so that's what the first colour. I'm going to use cadmium yellow or Windsor yellow, whichever one you've got, and I'm actually going to use alizarin crimson to get my dark greens. Now that's a mix, isn't it? Yeah. I've never done that before, so I don't know what's going to happen. Alizarin crimson. It just sounds right, that's all. Who knows? Right, okay, let's go. To start with, we want a distant field, right? And I didn't tell you that we're going to use raw sienna as well. Blood. So, and the reason, I'm just freshening that raw sienna up because I want that fairly, don't look too green. Right, I'm using raw sienna as my first colour because that raw sienna, or yellow ochre, if you've got yellow ochre, is not as intense as the Windsor or cadmium. Okay, so we start off with that for that distance area.
Can you repeat?
That's raw sienna or yellow ochre in a very weak application. Not too weak, but enough to give light. So that's our far distant field. Now, into that, I'm adding the cadmium yellow or Windsor yellow. Right? And that gives me a more sort of stronger yellow. And immediately you've got depth. You use a weaker yellow in the distance and a stronger yellow as you come forward. Right? Bit more of the Windsor yellow under that tree there. And we're coming back to this spiky area again at the base of that tree. Remember that when we produced that there? So we're making sure we get that right. And then to that, I'm going to add Prussian blue or Windsor blue. And that will give me quite a, you know, a nice bluey green, just a nice to start the softening of the tops of that bank. Remember, we've got a soft bank there. We want that to grow up into the distance. And then as it comes here, We can use it as a spiky area at that point. And that gives us our grassy effects. There we are. Look at that. Isn't that lovely? Now, Windsor blue, Prussian blue, with alizarin crimson and a touch of cadmium yellow.
Right, that went right over the top of my head.
Yeah.
All of those three.
Right.
Sorry, I must have
Windsor
gone
blue,
Sorry.
cadmium yellow,
Prussian.
and ultramarine.
Okay.
Sorry, alizarin crimson.
So just the three, yeah?
Yes, yep. And you need to paint that in fairly quickly to try and get that feeling of the depth of that bank.
And that's for what? Sorry, Colin, because
That is for that area there.
The bank
That's
area.
the bank, yes. Yeah.
So is that like the side of the bank?
That's as it touch into the water.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm just putting in a little here, just so as we can see it running behind those trees. Just gives a bit of depth of colour where that tree sits on the bank. There we go. Now a bit more red and a bit more yellow.
Do you mean alizarin?
Yes, a bit more of the alizarin and the yellow
cadmium yellow.
and a touch of blue, because if you think about it, that is the three primary colours which will give you a brown. And that brown sits nice and dark along that edge there. Like that. So you're actually, instead of using a burnt sienna or something like that, you're actually mixing the earthy part of that bank. And because there's red in there, it looks quite deep in tone and colour. And then I'm just going to lift off in places. We've got a soft edge, but I'm also lifting off. So as I'm lifting up, some little sense of a grassy bank. Can't really see any light there. And then I'm going in with plenty of Windsor blue and alizarin crimson for the real dark patch here and there, just along the edge of the waterline. Not everywhere.
Have you just added raw Prussian and alizarin to your mixture with the
Yes,
cadmium
yeah, just
yellow
add
already?
that in,
Right.
and that way you get a deeper mix. No more water. So you've got the feel of the grass, but we can obviously elaborate on that with a little bit of texture later on. But once that dries, if you notice, it looks all bitty because some are dry and some is wet. I'm just leaving it, and I'm just leaving it and praying, really.
That's
Yes, yeah, you see, you're not praying enough, are you? Right, now I'm going back into that same area because, whatever colour you put in, whether it be the blue, the yellow or the red, will dominate, whatever the majority of the colour you put in. So I want to go back to more sort of yellows. So I'm just putting into that more cadmium yellow and more water, because cadmium yellow and more water creates that light green again for those grasses. Yeah,
So
you
that's
see?
just cadmium yellow and Windsor blue or Prussian blue?
Yes, mainly. I mean, there may be a little of the red in there, but it doesn't have to be. I'm using the same colour within the mix. There you go. Look at that. Amazing the colours you can get from just the same mix, really. Now I'm adding a little bit more yellow because I want to pick up some nice yellow. See, I've added more yellow to it, and immediately we've got that lovely feeling of light hitting See where it's having green. And then I'm painting back. Notice I've got a clump there, and another clump there. That's that 3 clumps. That 3 clumps and you're out if you get them wrong. But if you get them right, there we go. And that's going through there. We can elaborate on that as well. There we go. And now I'm going to go a little darker, more blue and more yellow. Because I want to have a darker touch there. Don't want too much in the way of spiky bits at that point. There we go. So we're going back in dark again. I'm going dark there again. Just to create a little feeling that is a bit more uneven. And I'm lifting off again there. So I'm using darks against lights and lights against darks. There you go. Then I'm cleaning the brush again. You know, if you look at this technique and you do it in your own way, you know, hopefully, all being well, wind in the right direction, you should be able to get a similar effect that will be actually more to your own sort of style, really, because after all, we've all got our own style somewhere there. We've got one somewhere there. But it does take a bit of finding, I must admit that. And quite often styles change as you paint, you know. Right, more blue, more red now, more alizarin, more of the blue, a little bit of yellow. This will learn you to paint a wide variety of browns, greens, with just 3 colours, which is what I do quite often. And quite often, don't know why I do it, I put in a bit of red, look. And that, John Constable, he used bits of red, didn't he, in places, to enhance his paintings and to attract the eye to certain areas. I'm actually going to put one more in, there you go. Then I'm going back in with a bit of everything, just to finish that. Because you see, what we're trying to do, we're trying to create the impression of a bank, an undergrowth, without painting every single part in. Because there's loads of little bits and pieces going on. Now I'm going in just with cadmium, but laying over that. And of course you can overdo this, can't you? If you keep on, you can completely spoil it. That's why I'm going to leave it. And that's why I'm going to say something to that effect to start off your basic wash of greenery on the bank will set you in good stead for those finishing touches that really make all the difference.
Make or break.
Yes, it's make or break time. Now, I've drawn my large tree quite wide at the base of the trunk. So, in reality, it doesn't look anything like that one. But I'm not really worried, to be quite honest. I'm painting a tree. So, let's forget that. Let's just paint what we see. Say what you see. I remember that in a programme somewhere. But anyway, yes, that's it. Right, now, I'm going to use, right, let me just see what I've got down here. Burnt sienna, raw sienna, burnt sienna. Right, I'm going to use the burnt sienna now, right? First time we've used that, right? So I'm going to use burnt sienna with Windsor blue or Prussian blue. Now, I did say you get a green if you add too much blue. But of course, if you add a lot of brown, you get a lovely, rich, warm brown.
Sorry, you add a lot of what?
Brown, you get a rich, warm brown. If you add more of the blue, you get a green.
What brown have you added?
Burnt sienna. Burnt sienna. Yeah, burnt sienna.
I'm half asleep.
That's all right. I'm nearly there myself at this time of the afternoon. Right, so it's Windsor blue or Prussian blue with burnt sienna. Right. Now to start with, I'm using quite a bit of burnt sienna because I want this to have a decent bit of warmth to it and quite a strong mix. In other words, plenty of paint, not too much water. And then the old trick again of painting back in to create spiky areas where, there you go, and it's quite a substantial tree, this one. It shouldn't have been, but I got overexcited, I think, when I was putting my drawing down. And notice, I'm keeping that wet. Yes, it goes up like that. There we go, and lifting up. There you go, look at that. It sprays out at the bottom. Immediately that takes the attention of the whole thing. Right, now I'm adding a little more blue to that to make it slightly darker. And I'm just painting that in on the right hand side. And this one leaves the trunk there, if you remember, and that's adjoined to the trunk. And then I'm just twisting and shooting that away out of picture at the top. And you can just see where, because it's wet, I've pulled that like that, and it actually joins the trunk, right? But this one, a little bit more blue now, to make it slightly less intense red or brown. And I'm just going to leave a small bead, not too much, just to suggest that it leaves the trunk at the back. And then that goes up there like that. So you can definitely see that that one is part of that. That one leaves in the background and goes up because there's a bit more blue in there. The more blue you add, the further away that branch will look, purely because blues sit back. So the rich brown comes forward and the blue, sort of slightly green browns go away, right? They sit back. And now I'm adding a little bit more burnt sienna, not too much, for this one here. And this one goes from the back. Not sure whether that will be dark enough yet, but it's slightly green, which is I think it'll be an advantage, I don't know. See where I've gone thick there, right? See that thick? That means to say that I've got to thicken the rest of it. Otherwise it won't look right. So you can always do that. There we go, yes. A bit more brown in that. I'm touching this just with a little bit more brown. Just where it leaves the trunk. And then that will be more green as it goes into the distance. And that will give it depth. So that brown brings it close to that, but that being cooler sits it further back. Look at that. Lovely rounded sort of shape. And the way to ultimately to get a real rounded shape is to go in darker while it's still wet on this back edge and under there. And just allow a little bit of bark to slightly show, a little bit there. Go. And then from there onwards it goes up and I'm going dark again. So I'm blending that back down, but you know I'm just doing this just so as you can see how to achieve these variations. There we are. Once that completely dries, you'll be able to see exactly where that tree leaves that area of the trunk.
So how did you make it darker?
Just
Added
more blue.
More blue.
More blue, you could even add more blue and brown. Either
Yeah.
way, a denser mix. That's all. When I say darker, it's purely a denser mix.
Density.
Yeah. And of course, there's probably a shadow from that tree, from that branch, running across that there. So I've made that dark up to there. It's up to you really. It's not vital, but these are things that I'm just sort of putting out there for you to have a think about really. And if you make notes or you think about what you want to paint at another time, you may be able to use those sort of techniques. And I also have another branch that comes from here and it overlays on that, and I think that's dry now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have that branch comes across there and overlays on top of that, so we can definitely see that that branch runs in front of that. Make that a bit more brown, there we go. There we go. So you can see that that branch sits behind and that one sits in front. So don't just paint them all one tone. If you want a branch to come forward, paint it a bit darker than the cooler branch you paint going away. You can just use tones for this. I mean, I've mixed a variety of colours, but just use tones. Use the same colour and just vary the tone. No harm in that whatsoever. Just make that look a little bit more like a trunk. Good. Now, I don't think there's too much more I can do until I use the rigger. So I'm going to use the rigger now, I think. Yep. So, clean that brush off. Now, this rigger will produce the smaller twig areas and same mix. And it doesn't matter if you run out of colour. You don't need the same colour all the time. So remix again, you know, so you get a slightly different colour. Because I'm going to put in a smaller tree there, and I'm going to drag across the paper to try. That's going to sit in a similar position. There we are. I'm going to drag across the paper to get texture onto that. Just as a start to fill in that left-hand side. Don't they stand out brilliant against that background? This is what we want. This is exactly what we're looking for. Okay, what else have we got? Oh, we've got a branch there. That's going to be darker, doesn't matter. The more, you know, once you start putting these branches in, you don't have to follow the lines that you've drawn. You can make them up, really. I don't want to interfere too much with that. I don't mind a little bit here, dabbling down into the field. No, I can live with that, I think. Just be a little darker with that one. There you go. Because that's in front of that. Look at that. Lovely trees. Don't we love trees? Yeah. There's another branch that comes off there. And I'm putting that up there like that. And I'm going to pull it in a branch that heads off behind there. And that's going up into the canopy. I don't think we can suffer that. Now, that's dry, that's still wet. Don't try and blend them. Same with that there. Let them dry. They are the sort of areas that a few years ago I would have panicked over and created a bit of a mess, really, you know. I'd have lifted off and I'd have painted in, you know. But just leave it, just let it go. Right, we've got another branch. I'm going to have one come away from the trunk, go over that one there, another one there. Right, just put a few in here now.
You're beginning to titivate.
Oh, I'm titivating.
Oh dear.
Oh dear, look at this, look. Yeah, I'm beginning to, and I. Oh no, what am I doing? Oh, oh, what do I say? You can't take them out, but you can put them in. It's true.
Sorry,
Yeah.
time's ticking by. Can we start
To do
painting
the-
our
Yes,
tree?
you
Because
certainly
we still
can.
got to do the river,
Yeah,
haven't we?
yeah. We've only got the.
It's 3:15.
That's all right.
20
Yeah,
past.
yeah. Okay, you can make a start on that by all means. Perfect. So if you can get that tree down, we've then just got to put in the leafing and the reflection. You need to do now to finish this is to put some leaves on the trees, not too many, some rocks in the water, and some finishing touches on the bank with the rigger. Keep the leaves or mix the leaf colour so that it actually is dark enough to stand out against the light background. The bank area needs more attention, one or two darker areas here and there, a little bit of rigger work. The rocks are put in quite simply, just a handful really. Then the reflection is just a grey-green, could very well be a very light mix of all the colours that you've got in your mixing tray left over, but it must be the right tone, lighter than the bank either side of the river. Keep it simple, a few reflections, ripples in the reflections, and sign your work. You have completed your beautiful little scene here on the edge of the riverbank. Good luck, and I hope you enjoyed watching and painting this lovely scene along with me. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and we'll see you all again next time. Thank you for watching and taking part.